The wildest part is this. After a 12-hour shift, I came home and found a weapon-free zone, notice taped to my front door like my house was suddenly an airport terminal. Not the neighborhood, not the clubhouse, my private property. And the lady who put it there looked me dead in the eye like she'd just outlawed gravity. 8 months earlier, I'd been living downtown in a paper-thin apartment where you could hear your neighbors divorce through the vents, and after one too many nights of sirens, shouting, and someone's bass line turning my bedroom into a nightclub, I finally cracked, told myself, I don't need a bigger life, I need a quieter one, a yard, a garage, a little space to breathe. So I bought a foreclosure in a decent area. Needed work, but I'm handy, price was right, and the only real downside was the mandatory HOA, the kind of thing you ignore the way you ignore a beware of dogs sign on a Chihuahua fence. I figured if I paid my dues, kept the lawn green, and stayed out of the spotlight, nobody would bother me. Yeah, about that. I'm a single guy in my early 40s. I ride a loud cruiser I've spent years customizing, and I've got 2 German Shepherds, Rex and Bailey, plus 2 cats who are convinced they're also German Shepherds, which apparently made me the 4 horsemen of suburban panic. The HOA president, let's call her Cheryl because of course, lived directly across the street from me, and the first day I moved in, she didn't come over with cookies or a smile. She came over with a clipboard and a face like I'd parked a meth lab on her azaleas. I'm sweating, hauling boxes, dogs sitting calmly behind the gate I'd just installed, and I walk over like a normal human being. Hey, and I extend my hand. She doesn't take it, doesn't even blink, just stares at the dogs and goes, aggressive breeds are frowned upon in this community. I'm thinking, aggressive? Rex is literally sitting like a statue, and Bailey's looking at her the way a therapist looks at someone who thinks crystals fix everything. So I say real calm, they're not aggressive, they're just big. Cheryl makes a little note on her clipboard like she's documenting a war crime, then turns around and walks away without another word. That was day 1. After that, the fines started showing up like clockwork, almost romantic, really, if your love language is passive-aggressive envelopes. I'd come home exhausted, walk to the mailbox, and there it was, crisp white paper, printed like it came off an office machine that gets regular maintenance. Grass too high. I measured it, within limits. Next week, trash bins left out too long. Rule said 6 p.m. My schedule? Rotating shifts. Sometimes I don't get home until 8, or later if a booking drags. I emailed the board, explained like an adult, got a generic response that basically said, rules are rules, exceptions create anarchy. Like my trash can was the first domino in the collapse of Western civilization. Cheryl seemed to make it her full-time hobby to monitor my existence. If I washed my bike in the driveway, she watched from her window. If I had a buddy over, her beige sedan would crawl past my garage like she was casing the joint. It was creepy, but I kept telling myself, don't feed it, don't react, keep your head down. And here's the thing, I keep my professional life and private life separate on purpose. I don't wear my uniform to and from work, I change at the station. At home, I'm just a guy in jeans and a t-shirt, minding my business. The neighbors knew I worked for the city, but they didn't know exactly what I did, and I liked it that way, because people treat you different when they know, and I didn't move here to be a symbol, I moved here to breathe. Then Cheryl decided breathing was too much freedom. One Saturday afternoon, I'm in my garage, door open, music low, cleaning a couple of rifles after a range day. Historical pieces, sport shooting stuff, everything unloaded, safe, controlled, boring as paint drying if you're not the type to clutch pearls at the word firearm. I'm wiping down the barrel of a bolt-action hunting rifle when this shadow falls across my workbench, and I look up. Cheryl's standing at the threshold like she just discovered a live grenade in her pantry. Her eyes go wide, her scarf is clenched in one hand, and she hits me with, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Cleaning my equipment." She points at the rifle, finger shaking, and goes, "Guns are dangerous. I don't feel safe knowing those are in this neighborhood." I keep my voice polite because I'm still trying to live in the fantasy where reason works, ma'am. Everything here is unloaded, I'm on my property, and I'm being safe. She doesn't care. She says she's bringing it up at the next board meeting, says she won't tolerate a militia operating across the street. A militia? In my garage, with a rag and some gun oil. I actually laughed, couldn't help it. And that was my mistake, because her face went red, she spun like a wind-up toy, and marched home like she was about to declare martial law. 2 days later, the community gets a mass email, HOA newsletter, all caps, bold red text at the bottom like it's the end times. New safety initiative. Weapon-free zone. Residents prohibited from storing assault weapons or military-grade firearms in their homes or garages. I read it and actually snorted coffee through my nose, because that's not how any of this works. HOAs can regulate paint colors, and where you store your garbage bin, they don't get to rewrite state law through a newsletter like it's a church bulletin. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't stomp into a meeting. I filed it under Cheryl's latest performance art and went back to my life. A few weeks later, work blew up. We had a major case, catalytic converter theft ring, the kind of thing that turns your schedule into a blur and your patience into dust. We finally cracked it, made arrests, whole squad buzzing, and after that kind of week, you don't want a spa day, you want something simple, beer, bad food, laughter, and 10 minutes where nobody's asking you to relive details for paperwork. So I offered to host a Friday night cookout, big driveway, big grill, garage fridge always stocked. About 15 guys showed, mostly patrol, a couple detectives, 2 K9 handlers, a few bikes, a few trucks. Now I'll admit, the optics not exactly book club. Big dudes, boots, leather cuts, tattoos, sunglasses to a certain type of suburban tyrant. It probably looked like a biker gang assembling for a turf war. But we weren't being loud. Music was low. Cars parked legally. Nobody blocking driveways. Just guys decompressing, laughing, telling stories you only tell to people who get it, checking out each other's bikes, that kind of normal. About an hour in, I see the blinds across the street flutter. Cheryl's watching. I wave, because I'm petty in a polite way. She doesn't wave back. My buddy Mike, great guy, gentle as a golden retriever, looks like he could bench press a refrigerator, had just bought a new off-duty carry piece, compact pistol, nice custom work. He clears it right there, safety checks, mag out, chamber checked, textbook, and hands it to me. I'm admiring the grip work when I hear this screech from the street, like a car alarm and a banshee had a baby. Cheryl's standing at the edge of my driveway with her phone out, looking absolutely triumphant, like she'd just caught Al Capone. "I got you," she yells, and I swear, if she'd had a spotlight, she would have turned it on. She starts shouting about the HOA rules, about weapons being banned, about me harboring criminals, and she points at Mike like he's a movie villain, calls him a thug. She says she's going to fine me thousands, put a lien on my house, make me pay, and then she drops the big one, the nuclear option. "I'm calling the police," she screams, loud enough for 3 streets to hear. "I'm shutting this illegal garage party down." I try honestly one last time to stop the train before it hits the wall. I say, "Ma'am, you really don't want to do that." She smirks. That smug look of someone who thinks they hold all the cards because they have a clipboard and nothing better to do. Then she dials 911 right there, puts it on speaker like she's hosting a reality show, and starts lying to the dispatcher. Doesn't say noise complaint, doesn't say concern. She goes straight for maximum chaos. She reports a violent gang disturbance. Says men with guns are waving them around, threatening neighbors. She fears for her life, hits every buzzword designed to trigger a high-priority response. I stand there, hands on my hips, listening like I'm watching someone set their own kitchen on fire and call it a cooking experiment. Mike walks up behind me and goes, "Did she seriously just?" I nod. He laughs, then stops laughing, because a man with a gun call isn't funny in reality. We all know what happens when units roll up adrenalized, expecting a threat. One wrong movement, one misunderstanding, and somebody gets hurt. So I tell everyone, when they arrive, hands visible, no sudden moves, we're not getting shot by the night shift over potato salad. 10 minutes later, the cavalry arrives. For units, lights blazing, sirens cut a block away, then they burst into the cul-de-sac like it's an action movie. Floodlights, doors fly open, voices barking commands. "Police, let me see your hands." Officer Mueller is on point. Rookie, good kid, I trained him a couple years back. Right now his eyes are huge, he's crouched behind his door, weapon aimed square at my chest, doing the math on 15 big guys in leather and thinking, this is it, this is the call that changes your life. And then Cheryl comes marching out of her house, pointing at my garage, practically vibrating with excitement, yelling, "That's them. That's the gang. They have guns." She starts moving toward Mueller, which is the worst possible thing to do in a high-risk situation. Mueller yells, "Ma'am, get back in your house." But she's too busy being the star of her own delusion. I keep my hands high, palms open, and I use the voice that doesn't ask, it tells, "Mueller." He freezes. He blinks, trying to see past the glare. "It's me," I say slow, steady. It's a barbecue. And you can feel the entire scene shift, like a rubber band snapping back. Mueller lowers his weapon a fraction, then another. The other officers recognize faces, guys they've worked with, guys who've testified with them, guys who've shared cold coffee at 3 a.m. The sergeant on duty, Connor, walks up, takes one look at the gang, and starts chuckling. "So this is the gang activity?" he asks, gesturing to my driveway like it's a crime scene made of burgers. "Apparently," I say. "Mike brought potato salad that might violate health codes, but that's about it." Cheryl's face twists, rage and confusion fighting for first place. She steps between me and Connor, like she's about to supervise the arrest herself. "Why aren't you arresting them?" she shrieks. "They have guns." I banned guns. Connor, calm as a man who's talked down drunk college kids and armed idiots in equal measure, says, "Ma'am, owning firearms is legal. Having them on private property is not a crime." She stomps her foot. Literally stomps. "The HOA rules." Connor cuts in, not rude, just final. "We enforce state and federal law, not HOA bylaws." Then Cheryl makes the mistake that turns this from embarrassing into legal consequences. She points at Mike again and says, "He pointed a gun at me. That's assault. I want him arrested." Everything goes quiet. Even the guys who were smirking stop. Mike steps forward into the light, and his voice is low now, not playful. "Ma'am." He pulls his badge and holds it up. "Detective Kowalski, City PD. I have not pointed a weapon at anyone today, but you just committed a crime by making a false report." Cheryl scoffs like that's impossible, like reality is something she can veto. She demands real police, implies the uniforms here are part of a conspiracy, and Connor looks at me like, "Are we doing this?" I nod. She called it in on speaker. "I heard it." Connor turns back to Cheryl. "You initiated an emergency response based on false information," he says, "and we take that seriously. Resources are tied up here while someone else could be having a heart attack or being robbed." Her face goes pale so fast I honestly thought she might faint. "They're police?" she whispers, like she just realized she'd been yelling at a pack of wolves while holding a steak. Connor hands her a citation, misuse of 911. Misdemeanor. Mandatory court appearance. He tells her to sign. Her hand shakes so badly the pen scratches. Around us, neighbors are peeking out behind curtains, phones up, whispering. Cheryl's whole protector of the community, image evaporating in real time, dripping down the driveway like spilled soda. Connor gives her one more warning, voice flat. "If we receive another false call from you about this address, we will explore harassment charges. Do you understand?" She nods, eyes wet, and walks back to her house with her head down. And for the first time since I moved in, she doesn't look powerful, she looks small. After the units cleared, the party resumed, but quieter, adrenaline hangover, everybody still a little tense. For weeks, it became a running joke at work. "Hey, gang leader," guys would say when I walked in. Even the chief called me, laughing so hard he had to clear his throat. The legal fallout for Cheryl? Not a slap on the wrist. Connor told me later the judge played the 911 recording in court. Her voice, plain as day, embellishing, escalating, weaponizing fear to get the response she wanted. The judge lectured her for 10 minutes about wasting emergency resources, upheld the fine, added court costs, and you could practically hear the gavel echo with the word accountability. A week after that, I get a letter from the management company. I brace for another fine, but it's an apology. They reviewed the weapon-free zone policy, determined it was inconsistent with state law and the community's governing documents, rescinded it immediately then. This part still makes me grin. They voided all my previous fines. Grass, trash bins, everything. Like someone finally realized that turning a neighborhood into Cheryl's personal dictatorship was a liability nobody wanted to babysit. But the real victory, my favorite part, came at the next HOA meeting. I decided to attend straight from work, still in uniform, because I didn't have time to change and, honestly, I was done hiding. The room smelled like stale coffee and cheap carpet cleaner, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, that particular HOA ambience that makes grown adults argue about mailbox aesthetics like it's constitutional law. During open forum, a motion was made to remove Cheryl from the board, and it wasn't made by me. It was made by this sweet older lady who lived 2 doors down, the kind who always waves, always smiles, always seems harmless, until she opens her mouth and suddenly you realize she's been taking notes the whole time. She calmly cited mismanagement of funds, abuse of power, and creating legal liability for the association, said it with that gentle voice that somehow makes it sting more. The vote was almost unanimous. Cheryl gathered her papers in a shaking fury, muttering about ungrateful people, and stormed out like a dethroned queen. And I just sat there listening to the quiet that followed, the kind of quiet that only happens when a room collectively realizes, oh, we don't have to live like this. Since then, life's been peaceful. The new president is a guy in IT who doesn't care about my motorcycle, likes my dogs, and asked me for home security advice instead of trying to write me up for breathing wrong. And not long after, the house next to Cheryl's went up for sale. Big for sale sign planted right in the yard like a little flag of surrender. Now, before you think this is only an HOA story, let me tell you something. Once you've seen how fast a person will twist rules to feel powerful, you start spotting it everywhere. Because not long after all that, I watched my buddy, different neighborhood, different drama, get dragged into a stupid parking war with this older couple who acted like they owned the street. The guy complains because a friend parked near his house for a day, even though there's plenty of space, and my buddy and his partner tried the keep peace route. Avoid parking there, be polite, smile through it. And what did they get? A knock at 8 a.m. on a holiday, then a smug little confession later. Yeah, we called the cops on you, officer was going to ticket you, but I told him I'd talk to you first. Except the officer was never going to ticket anybody, because nobody was doing anything illegal. The neighbor was just trying to scare them into obedience, same playbook, different costume. My buddy called the non-emergency line. The officer basically sighed like, oh, these people again. Then the neighbors tried to claim a peace sign was a middle finger on camera, like grown adults living in a delusion they could edit reality if they argued hard enough. And then there was the gas thief, another guy I know, who caught his neighbor sneaking into his backyard, stealing gas from the mower can, pouring it into his car and mower, returning the can like nothing happened. So he did what any exhausted, done with your nonsense human might do. He peed in the gas can for a week, left it out like bait, pretended to go on a trip, came back an hour later, and watched the thief yanking his mower cord so hard he looked like he might summon lightning. Mower wouldn't start. Car broke down a couple blocks away, and suddenly karma smelled suspiciously like ammonia. I'm not saying that's the most mature solution. Honestly, it's disgusting, and I laughed anyway, but there's a thread through all of it that's hard to ignore. Here's the lesson I learned the hard way, standing under floodlights in my own driveway with a rookie officer aiming a gun at my chest because one woman wanted to feel important. Some people don't want safety, they want control, and when they don't get it, they'll use fear, rules, and authority like weapons, even if it risks someone else's life. The scary part isn't that people like Cheryl exist. The scary part is how long everybody stays quiet just to keep the peace, until the peace is basically hostage negotiations. And the irony? The moment Cheryl faced real consequences, real law, real accountability, she shrank. Not because she suddenly grew a conscience, but because power only feels good when nobody pushes back. These days, I still grill in my driveway. Rex and Bailey still sit behind the gate like furry bouncers. The bikes still rumble. And everything I do is completely legal, which makes it even funnier, because the only thing that ever needed policing in this neighborhood was one person's obsession with being the boss of everybody else. So let me ask you something, and I'm genuinely curious because people get heated about this. Where's the line between standing up for yourself and going too far when someone's abusing power, especially when they hide behind rules or law enforcement or the idea of protecting the community? And if you've ever dealt with an HOA tyrant, an entitled neighbor, or someone who tried to weaponize authority against you, drop your story in the comments. Tell me what you did, tell me what you wish you did, and tell me, was it justice or was it just revenge with better timing?